Watch the lag here. Come on. There we go. I tried to click on the climate control and nothing. Absolutely nothing. You flip it to the fan, no response. And then you go through the rest of the infotainment system and it's so laggy and so terrible. It's almost unbearable. Welcome to Hoovie's Garage, the dumbest automotive channel in all of YouTube. And my usual trick when I go out of town, and I'm in Palm Beach, Florida right now, is to find a car to buy and try and drive it home with varying degrees of success. I failed a lot because I buy something that's too old and sight unseen, so I thought maybe I should buy something newer and sight unseen for this trip, so that's why I chose this 2012 Fisker Karma. And let me tell you, you should never, ever buy one of these. Unfortunately, I am in for a really hot, miserable trip home if I even decide to do it, because this thing is an absolute mess. Now, the company itself, Fisker, is a giant mess as well. There's the one Fisker Automotive that went bankrupt in 2013, I believe, 1 year after this car was built. There's only about 2,000 of these plug-in hybrid versions of the Fisker Karma built before the battery supplier for these went bankrupt. It idled production. The leftovers were eventually bought by a Chinese company. They made all electric cars for a while, but that went bankrupt. And now Fisker is back with an all-new company that is about to go bankrupt. But I thought this was the coolest version, and you would think a plug-in hybrid, that's what people seem to really like nowadays, would be really good as a used car, especially for under $20,000. I bought this with 18,000 miles for right at 20 grand, but they can be cheaper with higher mileage and more sketchy condition. But I wanted to get a nice one, still cheap, but unfortunately I have made a huge mistake, and hopefully you don't ever do this. But before we get into things, I would like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. I was matched with a BetterHelp therapist a few years ago, and just having someone to talk to that had no connection to anyone in my life who could look at it all objectively and help me gain new insights was huge. I couldn't get past the loss of a loved one during COVID when things were turned upside down, and I had some insecurities and low self-esteem dating back to me being an awkward teenager that I never really talked about until my BetterHelp therapist zeroed right in on it. So BetterHelp can help you like it helped me by connecting you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site, link below, betterhelp.com/Hoovies. Then answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you with a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You'll be matched with a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast, all from the comfort of your home. Visit betterhelp.com/Hoovies or choose Hoovie's Garage during sign-up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Now back to the Fisker. It doesn't need a therapist, it needs an exorcist. Let's start with the cool stuff about the Fisker before I get into why you should never ever buy one. And the first one is the styling and how it does seem on paper. Now, Henrik Fisker, he did design this car. He's a famous designer, did the Z8s, modern Aston Martins, and he is really good at making a car look pretty. This Fisker from every angle is unique and gorgeous, way better looking than a Tesla Model S that came out at the same time. The front fenders, the way they raise sort of like a Corvette Stingray, looks so good. The headlights, so pretty, and this one's only showing 18,000 miles on it, and I bought it for only $20,000. So ridiculously cheap for one of these, and it is in great condition. There are some cheaper ones out there, but they have a lot more damage, a lot more curb rash like this all over, because it is sort of hard to see visibility wise with those big fenders and the way the rear quarter is. Easy to smash up and bop into things, but this one overall is in very nice shape. The trunk is much shorter than the nose, as you can see, but that same bulbous shape, that low roof line, it does look very cool. And at principle, this is a great car. It's what people want today, plug-in hybrids. You get 50 miles of range only on the battery if you don't drive it like a crazy person, and then when you run out of battery, the motor kicks on and you have another several hundred miles of unlimited mile range because you can stop and fill up and drive it cross country. But for the normal daily commute, you plug it in every single night, you may never hear the gas engine turn on. And to plug it in every day, that's why it has a fill up on both sides. This one is for electricity, and on the other side, it is for gasoline, which which I'm going to assume that has a fuel filler door on. You can also see it does have a big solar panel on the roof, and that does actually power some of the accessories on this car, but it doesn't help charge the battery like on the newer Fiskers. And you go inside, and it is just as pretty on the inside as it is the outside. So it is actually running right now. You might be hearing a little noise. Those are actually speakers here out the back, and they make sort of a George Jetson buzzy noise. They did this because they were worried about the cars being so quiet that people wouldn't hear them step out in front of them. So they created this sort of noise. Spaceship, Tron, whatever, but it does have a gasoline motor that kicks on. The exhaust outlet isn't out of there though, it is out the driver's side. Right down here, sort of like my SLR McLaren, which is kind of cool in theory. And I never had this issue with the SLR, but I sure did with the Fisker when I first sat in it and was discovering all of its issues. But before I discovered the issues, just looking inside, the design is just as pretty on the inside and the outside. The two-tone seats, as you can see, really nice. The infotainment screen, elegantly done. The gauges do look very cool. Everything about this car design-wise, the dash, quality, fit and finish, it does look really, really good. And Fisker lost money on every single one of these. I bought this car for, well, 80% off its original price. This is around $100,000, but Fisker lost about $30,000, $40,000 on every single one of these that they built. A little over 2,000 of these first generation hybrid ones built before the battery supplier for these went bankrupt and they had to stop making cars. A Chinese company bought the leftovers and brought back the Karma as an all-electric, which didn't do very well. And since then, Fisker has founded the new company, Karma Inc., I believe, and they are on death's door with their latest offering with the Ocean that has been widely panned for about the same reasons as this Karma 12 years ago. But you can see nice natural wood here. This glove button is for the glove box. This push button start says EVER, which means electric vehicle extended range. And it does have paddle shifters, but since it doesn't have a transmission, it just goes to the electric system. These paddles change it from stealth mode, which is all electric, to sport, which sort of makes it a hybrid. And then you have the hill button, which helps you with hill descent with the braking, the regen braking, to help it stop on a hill a little bit better, the regen system. Now let's talk about where things have gone horribly, horribly wrong with this Karma and why it was a huge mistake to buy one and why you should never, ever buy one. So let's start with the delivery experience of this. I bought it at auction on Bring a Trailer, sight unseen, flew out here thinking getting a newer car would be better, and I wasn't greeted by the owner, but an employee of the owner. He's out of the country, and the employee had no idea how to work any of it. I got in, started it up. I saw the check engine light was on, but thought maybe that's because it was in electric mode and the check engine light would be on because of that. Drove off and sort of tried to figure things out as I went, and I felt like a dinosaur of an old man because it is so clunky, starting with its infotainment system. So you hit agree, watch the lag here. Come on. There we go. So we have the infotainment system right here. Let me turn the car a little bit to where it's in the shade and you can see it a little bit better. And you notice every time I put the car in gear, there's a little light. So neutral, little green light, park, a little green light, and it's all in this glass. This is a design element. It doesn't pop up. It's just a thing that looks cool. I kind of like it, except on the driver's door, this part has sort of come loose. So if I close the door too hard, the piece comes flying off. I mean, that's a dab of glue. That's no big deal. But the big issue is the climate control. Unfortunately, I didn't think I knew how to work it, didn't know how to turn it on, but I go to auto, go to fan. We have no response. You can see it taps. It makes the tapping noise and is responding to my inputs, but it's just not coming on. So one of the selling points of this car, even though it wasn't the cheapest in the USA at $20,000, was the service records. It had an $8,500 repair not that long ago, mileage-wise. This thing has 17,900 miles. At like 16,000 miles, it had the blower motor replaced. It had a lot of the battery and charging issue stuff repaired, and a few other little odds and ends for $8,500. A big, massive repair on the West Coast before it was brought here to Florida, and it's mostly sat ever since. So I was actually sitting through dinner, looking through this massive owner's manual, trying to figure out if I'm doing something wrong here. And maybe I am, but I don't think so, because I watched the Doug DeMuro video on this car where he said it's a great deal for $40,000, watched him toggle through, and it responds to him. Nothing is coming on. The heated seats come on, the rear defroster comes on, all of this stuff works, albeit enormous lag. There we go. How about audio? Come on, audio. There we go. Toggle through the stereo. It's lagging behind. Come on, come back. I mean, it is comically bad and slow, but I don't think I'm doing anything wrong to get this to work. So I had dead climate control, I had a check engine light, and then when I got it up on the highway, unfortunately, there was a massive shake because I think this thing has been parked for such a long time that the tires are out of round and lost balance. At over 70 miles an hour, this thing starts to shake itself apart. The plan was to drive this thing cross country home, go visit some relatives in the panhandle of Florida on the way, and that's not happening. Now, these issues are very common with the Fiskers, so common that owners call them divas. And when I was looking on the forums last night of people trying to keep them running, they did have some pointers. And unfortunately, there's not any service centers really in South Florida that I know of that will work on this car, as the people that were selling the Karma back in the day no longer service these cars. And there's a few independents, I think one on the West Coast, one in the Philly area, that will fix all these up, but that doesn't solve my immediate situation of not having any climate control response. But one common thing, and what gave me hope, was to do a hard reset, basically a Control-Alt-Delete on these Karmas, which owners report on having to do quite regularly whenever they get buggy and start becoming divas. And that is over here. This plug right here can be disconnected and your Karma will completely shut off. You're supposed to leave it for 10, 20, 30 minutes, which I've done over and over again, hoping to get something. It hard resets everything, and supposedly that fixes a lot of Karma owners' issues, say when it won't go into drive, or the blower stuck on full, or 100 other things that happen to be fixed with this hard reset. It could be a weekly occurrence for some owners, but unfortunately in my case, it didn't do a thing. The climate control is still unresponsive, so I'm wondering if the blower motor has failed yet again on this car. But you think, even if it failed, you would think the blower motor wouldn't affect the infotainment system, which refuses to respond. So I'm stuck. The car wizard is willing to take a look at it and thinks it's interesting and would be fun, but I'm gonna have to ship it home to him. If he can't do it, I would probably have to ship it to the East Coast to be quicker, so that I'm at like $4,000 or $5,000 in shipping on a $20,000 car just to get it fixed, unfortunately. But at principle, this engine here should be pretty serviceable because it is a GM Ecotec 4-cylinder, same as the Pontiac Solstice GXP. The Chevy HHR SS, which I just sold, had the same engine, and combined it's about 400 horsepower with the electric battery. Everything working together to make this thing go. But look at that beautiful glistening paint job on this thing too. It is in such nice shape, but unfortunately, I don't want to go anywhere in this car because it's 85, 90 degrees here in South Florida. And yeah, I need climate control. I'm kind of spoiled in that sense. Oh, that's nice. There's a screw sitting down here for whatever reason. I wonder why. And then they have the Karma on the door sill to where you can't even see it on the inside. That's very odd. So let's take this thing out for a spin before I melt. Here we go. All right, getting to know this car a little bit better and just sort of waiting for the lag. But one thing, having critical stuff in the infotainment screen is just a terrible, terrible idea because it will get dated no matter what. Because it would help so much as far as the diagnostics of this to have a blower motor switch to know if the fan comes on or not when you turn the switch manually and be able to diag from that, not through software. And the diagnostic thing in this screen doesn't respond either, unfortunately, even after the hard reset. So it is very annoying. Now the driving experience, it is pretty snappy like an electric car. It's rear-wheel drive, so it is fun. In sport mode, the engine comes in and helps. It does feel like it does have 400 horsepower, but it's heavy. It is a very heavy feeling car. I wouldn't call it sporty at all, but I don't mind that a car is not sporty. It does ride very nicely, so I dig it in that sense. And another thing that I like, other than the climate control not working and me being miserably hot, it is pretty comfortable. The exhaust coming out on the driver's side is an interesting choice though, because while I was sitting there trying to figure out how to get everything to work, the motor did kick on. I think it has really old gas in it because it smelled terrible and just came right into the cabin because the exhaust pipe is right there. Fun on the SLR McLaren, don't notice the exhaust smell, but on this one, I sure do. Regen braking as well, which is nice to help charge up the battery. Let's see if I can get it to launch a little bit, turn off the traction control. Maybe. Come on. Come on. Is there a delay? Hold it down. It's pretty quick. It's not bad. It's not fast by any means either. I think the HHR-SS with just this motor by itself was a bit quicker than this thing off the line with the batteries helping it. So what does that tell you? Even though it's 400 horsepower combined, the Ecotec was, 250, 260, something like that, and it felt faster just on its own. But I do certainly look cool and feel cool. The most famous owner of one of these was Justin Bieber. He had his wrapped in chrome and got a lot of press with that car. So for $20,000, you get something that is very exotic looking, and only about 2,000 of these total in production. Who knows how many are surviving because they are dropping like flies. They were built in Finland, designed in the US. Very weird. I wonder how many of these will be left in 10 years. If we're down to like less than half at this point of those that are still working, and there'll be even less as the years go on. I have no idea. I know there's a big fan base with these, and I can see why people would love them, but if you're a normal person wanting a car to get A to B, you should never ever buy one of these. It is way too clunky and temperamental. I suppose parts availability, while there's used ones being sold for spares, you might find some things and then match it up to the Ecotec. But eventually, the used parts will dry up. Maybe someone will step in and figure it all out. But then finding somebody to work on them and figure this stuff out will definitely be a thing. Oh, here comes the steering wheel shake. And then what does all that headache get you? A car that looks good, but isn't that engaging to drive, isn't that fast, and is super annoying to do basic things in it, like turn on the stereo or turn on the fan if it works. And then some days it won't want to work at all, and you just have to unplug something under the hood, wait 10, 20, 30 minutes, plug it back in, and hope the car works again. No. Since I'm a pretty hardcore automotive masochist, I'm going to give this car a few more chances. We will get it to the car wizards, and we will figure out what the heck is going on. I'm going to have to find a different way to get cross-country back home because this isn't going to work in its current state. So back to the grindstone for me as far as work, and as always, thank you so much for watching.